there, I'm Shawna Robins. I'm doing an interview for Authority Magazine. And today we're going to be talking about why you should make getting a good night's sleep a priority in your life and how you can make that happen. And I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Paul Muchowski, the CEO and CSO of Defined Research, Inc. He's a renowned neuroscientist with a Ph.D. from the University of Washington. In 2016, Paul founded Defined Research, a biotech company whose mission is to develop proprietary, clinically proven CBD-based products targeted at the relief of major human ailments. After years of scientific research, Paul developed a unique CBD formula for defined sleep. He's the first scientist to conduct a double-blind, placebo-controlled study with the use of CBD as a sleep supplement, making defined sleep the only research-based CBD supplement backed by a clinical trial on the market today. So hi, Paul. Thank you for joining me.
Hi there. Nice to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to talk to you about all things sleep, and I just can't wait to dive into your research and everything. But first of all, can you give me a background on how you became involved in sleep health?
Yeah, so basically, my background is I'm a scientist, like as you mentioned, always been involved in research, scientific research, and got interested in biotechnology. So a number of years ago, started this company, Defined Research, with a big interest in CBD. And what we felt like CBD holds enormous promise for treating a bunch of different ailments in humans, but we also felt that rigorous evidence supporting its use for these ailments is lacking. And so when we started to look at what CBD might be helpful for, one thing stood out quite quickly, and that was sleep. And so that's how I got interested in sleep. But basically, the details of that story were so CBD is actually the active ingredient in an FDA-approved drug called Epidiolex that's used to treat children with severe forms of epilepsy. And when you studied those trials and you looked at the adverse events that were reported, the number one adverse event in those trials was sleepiness. So, that basically was the sort of aha moment that was like, well, maybe CBD actually does impact sleep. And that's how we got interested in sleep.
Wow, that's wonderful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, in the article, you touched on how much sleep adults should be getting each night. Can you talk just a little bit about kind of sleep quality and sleep duration so people have a little background on, what you recommend and what you think?
Yeah, so, sleep is enormously complex. And everyone requires different amounts of sleep, and even on a night-to-night basis, the actual quality of your sleep can vary. So it's hard to say definitively like, oh, you need 8 hours or you need 10 hours. You certainly do. You certainly need a good minimal amount of sleep. But I think just as important is the quality of sleep, and of course, what goes into the quality of sleep can be influenced by a wide variety of factors: how much you exercise, whether you drank alcohol or not, or caffeine, things like this. So, I view it really more holistically, like that there's a lot of factors that contribute to good sleep, and what you're seeking is not necessarily massive hours, but good quality sleep.
So then how does CBD play into getting good quality sleep?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When we first tested CBD to see how it impacted sleep, we were completely agnostic. We actually had no idea. We just knew that it was reported that it made these children sleepy. So we decided to use sleep tracking technology, essentially wrist-worn sleep tracking technology that basically would report on any possible way that CBD might impact sleep. And when we did this was an early clinical trial that we performed. What jumped out right away was it wasn't that CBD was making you fall asleep faster. It wasn't necessarily even that it made you sleep longer, though, although for some people it did. But what stood out is that it shifted the type of quality of sleep you had. And so I'm just going to go into a little bit more detail about that. But when we sleep, your brain goes through these cycles. First, you're awake, then you're in light sleep, then you're in what's called deep sleep or slow wave sleep, And then you go to REM sleep or rapid eye movement sleep where you dream. And if you have a normal brain, that whole process repeats itself several times. And what we found was that CBD increases the amount of time that you spend in deep and REM sleep. So it wasn't necessarily that it makes you sleep longer. It definitely didn't sedate you and knock you out in any way. But once you're asleep, it makes you have higher quality sleep. And a lot of people believe that deep and REM sleep are critically important for all sorts of both things in normal health, but also to prevent disease.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that. So when it comes to CBD, what are we talking about? Are we talking, which cannabinoids are we talking about? I know
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a lot of different cannabinoids. Does it have THC in it? Does it not? Can you
yeah.
can you kind of give me some details on that?
Yeah, that's really important. So, CBD is one of the two major cannabinoids, and the other one is THC. And a lot of people aren't that familiar with the differences between the two because chemically they look quite similar. They're almost identical, but they have very different impacts on physiology. And so essentially, THC has some intoxicating effects, can make you feel euphoric, can raise your heart rate. Um, and basically, it's the cannabinoid that gets you high. CBD doesn't do any of that, actually. It really remarkably has very little impact on behaviors beyond that it might calm you down a little. And so our product, we chose to use only highly purified CBD. The vast majority of products that are CBD products that are on the market are derived from what are called extracts. So they're plant extracts. So kind of like grape juice, say, for example. And that's fine. There's some good aspects to making extracts, but the negative aspects are that you can't control what's in there. So just like a wine varies year to year in terms of how it might taste, because of different environmental impacts and so forth. Same is true for the hemp plant that CBD is derived from. So we didn't want to have any THC in there at all because we didn't believe THC would be helpful. So what we did is start with highly purified CBD. So we basically start with crystalline CBD that's 99.9% pure CBD. There's nothing else in there. And then the other unique aspect of the formulation that we use is the CBD also contains an additional series of molecules that are called terpenes. And so what are terpenes, of course? Terpenes are also small plant-based molecules that are found in every plant, actually. Um, but they're also found in the hemp plant. And the reason we chose to include some of these terpenes is that there was evidence that they also might promote good sleep, based from animal studies previously. And so basically, we start with highly purified CBD. We hand selected 8 different unique terpenes that are highly purified as well, and then reconstructed them into this capsule that basically has those, but has no THC, nothing else whatsoever. Of course, we tested like in actually 4 independent labs to make sure that there's nothing else in there, no impurities, no contaminants, things like that. And the bottom line for us is when we made a product like this, we want it to be the exact same every time so that the consumer can, if it benefits them, will have the exact same benefit, very much like a pharmaceutical approach.
Wow. Okay. So when I coach with most of my clients, like we talked about before the interview, CBN seems to be
Yeah.
the cannabinoid of choice. So can you talk to me about the different types for sleep? I know that that one is really marketed, especially towards women. Do you like that one better than CBD, or is there a reason why, you wouldn't use CBN or even CBG in yours? I mean,
Yeah.
there's different types.
So the great question. So there are lots of cannabinoids, and they're becoming in more widespread use for consumers these days, including the ones you mentioned, CBN, CBG. Um, so CBN was widely marketed by companies as having sleep promoting benefits. As scientists, we didn't know, we had no evidence, there was nothing in the scientific literature that would suggest either way it might work or not. Whereas we had hints from the clinical trials for CBD that it might promote sleep. And so that's the only reason we focus on CBD initially. Um, and so, but having said that, whether or not CBN might impact sleep, we didn't know. And we actually were interested in conducting clinical trials to determine that. And that was kind of something that we're lining up to do next. but someone beat us to it, as it turns out. And I was at a recent conference sponsored by essentially the sleep neurologists in the United States, where a group presented really, I would feel, fairly compelling data that CBN could impact sleep in a positive way, in some ways similar to the effects that we're seeing with CBD. But one important thing is, and people get this with CBD wrong as well, the dose is really important. And so while the vast majority of products for CBD and CBN tend to be fairly low dose, meaning like 5, 10, 15 milligrams per dose, all the studies that I've seen indicate that you need much higher doses, like in the hundreds of milligrams, before you see beneficial impacts on sleep. So, and for CBG, I have no idea. There's nothing out there yet. It's not marketed as necessarily impacting sleep either. But so we'll see. But my suspicion is that as the whole field evolves, we're going to see more and more clinical research being done on these cannabinoids, so we learn exactly how they work and what they're doing, what their side effects are, and so on.
I think that this is such a powerful tool for people to be able to have in their toolkit for sleep. I mean, the idea that you could just, take a pill and then sleep well every night is probably not a healthy, realistic way to live. But the fact that if you can be doing positive things for your sleep during the day, like you talked about, watching your caffeine consumption, watching your alcohol consumption, exercising, stress management, diet, but then you're still not to the point where you're getting enough deep sleep where you feel rested. And I know, especially as people age and their melatonin starts to decrease, this could be something that could be a great tool for them in their toolkit.
Yeah, I mean, we really feel ultimately that, as I mentioned, sleep is complex, and we always recommend using our product as needed. On nights that you feel like that it could benefit you, that's the time to use it. Um, One thing I should mention though too is that there's a lot of genetics in sleep too. So some people are just predisposed to not sleep as well, or for example, some are predisposed to having less deep and REM sleep. So particularly as we age, that occurs. Typically, we sleep less as we age. You're talking about peri and postmenopause. It's clear that there's a big spike in insomnia when that happens, probably due to hormonal changes. Um, and so, it's complicated. We evolve, like your sleep needs can vary. And for some people, they do all the right things. They exercise, they have a good diet, they don't drink caffeine, and they still have insomnia. And I think for people like that, this type of product is really quite remarkably good, mainly because it seems to work for them, and then also because it has an outstanding safety profile. And I think that's really critical. I mean, if you compare CBD, for example, to the vast majority of over-the-counter or prescription sleep medicines, the safety profile is far superior, not even close.
I would
So
agree 100%. I'd much rather have a client use a CBD product than a benzodiazepine,
yeah,
for sleep, especially because a lot of sleep issues too are anxiety related. Women
yeah,
get the spinning brain. They get the, wake up
yeah.
at 3 o'clock in the morning and, want to fix everything that's happening in their life or the worries or that sort of thing. And so I think CBD is really helpful at calming the nervous system down. Could you talk a little bit about what you found in your clinical trials about that?
Yeah, so the interplay between sort of anxiety and sleep are really close. They overlap in both directions. Like people who have anxiety don't sleep well, people who don't sleep well have anxiety. Um, and in our earliest trial, we actually measured anxiety that we did and found that sure enough, people who seemed to have better sleep, their anxiety had been lowered. And so, the chicken and egg is a really difficult thing to parse out here. So we don't know if they're sleeping better and they have less anxiety because of that, or vice versa, or maybe it's both. But it's something that we want to look into in more detail. But I also just wanted to mention, so like well, going back to what you had mentioned before, why some people, genetically just don't sleep well. I forgot to mention this, but there's also people whose job forces them to not sleep well. And what I'm talking about here is essentially people who do shift work. And there's a lot of different examples, but the ones I like to give are like, for example, an ICU nurse or a firefighter or a policeman or a truck driver or an Amazon warehouse worker. So where you're sleeping basically during the day and working at night, and our brains did not evolve to do that. And so these people really have quite horrific insomnia, and all of them have less deep and REM sleep. So when they sleep during the day, they sleep, but they don't sleep as many hours, and they have far less deep and REM sleep. And so, in our trial, one of the most interesting things that we found was that our product really positively impacted that population to a much greater magnitude than in the general population.
Wow, what a great help for first responders and doctors and, like you said, people that are having to work shift work. That's always a big issue that I see when I have clients that have to do that. Even if it's just 2 days a week, an ER nurse, 2 days a week has to work a 12-hour shift, really, really challenging on the body to then come back from that. So what a
Yeah.
wonderful gift that you have to give them, again, another tool in their toolkit to be able to help their body repair itself and get that deep sleep that the brain and the heart and the immune system and every part of the body needs. So that's wonderful. Anything else that you can share with people listening regarding your trials or your product that we
Yeah, basically, just that, the big picture here is that, I think consumers deserve to have products that have been really carefully tested. There's so many companies make false medical claims in this space, and to me, it's quite frustrating, especially for the naive consumer who's never tried it before. Okay, I'm going to do a Google search and I'm going to try this product. Oh yeah, it's going to cure this and that and everything for me, including anxiety in your goldfish. And it's and I think that's very frustrating as a consumer probably to like face that and not have any idea whether or not something actually works or has been backed up by real research. And like I mentioned earlier, I think this is going to be more and more common. I think more companies are going to do this, but we're excited to sort of be on the forefront of this wave of new companies that's actually going to do real research and publish that research in peer-reviewed journals. And so I'm excited about it. And we're actually we're not stopping here. We're going to look at some other areas. I mentioned anxiety earlier. That's something we're very interested in delving into further. And one of the more interesting areas that we're right now is in autism. So it turns out that in autism, sleep abnormalities are very omnipresent. Something like 80% of children and adolescents with autism have sleep abnormalities. And surprisingly, no one's really ever asked, like, hey, if we can make them sleep better, would your features of autism improve or not? And we have some case studies that we're also getting close to publishing that look very promising, and that's motivated us now to do a big clinical trial in autism.
Great. That's so helpful. That's wonderful. All right. So how can people get in touch with you? How can they find your company? How can they find you?
Yeah, so basically, our company is called Defined Research. So just on the web or on socials, we're Defined Research. But mainly, we market ourselves as the product Defined Sleep because that's we only have one product at this point. And so if you Google Defined Sleep, we'll come right up. And in terms of me, I think if you Google Defined Sleep or my name, same thing. That's the easiest way, probably.
Great. Great. Thanks, Paul. I
Sure.
appreciate you meeting with me today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great
It was a
conversation.
pleasure.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's great what you guys are doing. And I'm so happy that we can have this chat and just educate people to what they need to know so that they can sleep better, take better
Well,
care of
thank you. I
themselves.
appreciate it.